What's up everyone? I'm back with vlog number 2 of this training series. I decided I'm not really going to go over my training program itself during these vlogs and just focus more on giving you guys information. So if you want to check out my vlog, I'm going to put a link below in the description and you can click on that link. But we're just going to go over straight up educational stuff in these videos. So today's topic is training volume, intensity, and frequency. Last week we went over training volume and how that's calculated. And this week we're going to go into more of the programming of how volume, intensity, and frequency come into play. So as we talked about last week, volume is the number of sets times the reps times the load lifted. Intensity is the percentage of the 1 RM lifted. And that comes into play with the load. So the load you lift in the volume is going to be a percentage of your 1 repetition max. And this 1 repetition max is going to determine how many reps you can complete. And if you're using your 1 repetition max weight, you're only going to be able to do 1 rep. Frequency is simply the number of times a muscle or a lift is trained in a given time period, and that's usually qualified as a 1 week time period. We're not really going to talk about frequency much in this video. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end, but mainly we're going to focus on volume and intensity. So what I've done here is broken down volume into a table based on different loads used. For each set, we're going to keep it at 3 sets. So this table is using a 1 RM of 315. 3 sets of 1 rep with 315, 100% of the 1 RM gives you a volume of 945. And as we go down the table, you'll see that the reps increase, the load decreases, and the volume's actually highest when you do 3 sets of 12 reps with 220 pounds, or 70% of your 1 RM, gives you a volume of 7,920. So as you can see, if you're just looking at a set-by-set basis, doing 3 sets of 1 is going to be much lower volume than doing 3 sets of 12 reps. So this is where the programming comes into play based on your goals. How you set up your volume and intensity are going to be determined by your goals, whether you're training to gain size or to gain strength. So the way to look at things is, as the intensity increases, your volume is going to decrease. So what does that mean for you? Using these same examples, there was a study done by Brad Schoenfeld who compared 2 groups of lifters. One group lifted with their 10 RM doing sets, and the other group lifted with their 3 RM. Going back to our example, 3 sets of 10 reps with a 10 RM weight, 235 equals 7,050 pounds. So that if you did 3 sets of 3 reps with 300 pounds, or your 3 RM, that's only 2,700 pounds. So in order to create the same amount of volume as doing 3 sets of 10 reps, you would have to do 8 sets. And that's what Brad's study looked at. And what he found is that when you had volume equated, or the same amount of volume between 2 groups, there was an equal amount of hypertrophy. But what the study also showed is the group that lifted with their 3 RM gained more strength in their 1 repetition max. And if you remember back into our video last week, strength is very specific. If you're trying to increase your 1 repetition max, you need to train with heavy loads that closely resemble your 1 repetition max. But the important thing to remember is that when you equate volume, hypertrophy is equal. So when you're going to set up your own program, what sets and reps and intensity do you choose? Well, that depends on your goal. If your goal is strictly hypertrophy, you're going to want to stick with these higher rep ranges that are going to give you more volume. If your goal is strength, you're going to stick with the lower rep ranges that are more specific to the training adaptations to increase your 1 repetition max strength. But if you want to do a combination of strength and hypertrophy, you're going to do a mix of both. And you can vary the number of sets and reps throughout your program based on what you're focusing on at that time. So the take home from this video is, volume includes load, which is based on your 1 repetition max. The intensity is going to determine the number of reps you use. As you can see, as intensity or load increases, your volume is going to decrease. So you're going to take that into consideration when you're programming your lifts. If you're trying to maximize muscle hypertrophy, you're going to want to lift in these higher rep ranges with a lower percentage of your 1 repetition max, which is going to create more volume. If you're trying to gain 1 repetition max strength, you're going to lift in these lower rep ranges. And again, if you're trying to increase muscle hypertrophy at the same time, you could simply do more sets in the lower rep range. Or you can include additional exercises in higher rep ranges, like we showed in the example workouts last week. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that kind of gives you insight into how to vary your volume and intensity based on your goals. Frequency, the number of times you hit a muscle or lift each week, is an easy way to increase volume. If you could take this entire table, and let's say this is hitting this muscle or lift 1 time per week. If you increase it to 2 times per week, you're automatically doubling your volume. So, I mean, based on the studies, the optimal frequency to train a muscle or lift is 2 to 3 times per week. So we'll get into this a little bit more in future videos of how to balance volume and intensity based on your frequency. But I hope this gave you some points that you can use in your own training program. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. Give this a thumbs up if you liked the video. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't like this and didn't learn anything. Hope you guys enjoyed.